are in a position of extraordinary power.
What have I heard about what?
About your return. How have they felt about your return?
No, I haven't been gone.
Okay.
Everybody is too old. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Tangle YouTube channel. I'm your host, Isaac Stahl. Last week, we asked if Joe Biden is getting too old to be president. Then, the day before that video was about to get released, this happened.
Okay.
Senator, you're up for election in 3 short years. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, I had a hard time hearing you.
That's okay. What are your thoughts on running for re-election in 2026?
What are my thoughts about what?
Running for re-election in 2026.
That's
Did you hear the question, Senator? Running for re-election in 2026?
yes.
All right, I'm sorry, you all. We're going to need a minute. Senator Benny.
Yep.
Head outside, sir. Come with us. Okay.
Somebody else have a question? Please speak up.
It's 9 a.m. I can't do this. That is Republican Mitch McConnell. He's the current Senate Minority Leader. This happened just last week. It was the second time McConnell appeared to freeze when answering questions with the press this summer, and that came after he missed roughly 6 weeks of work after suffering a fall in March. This, for good reason, is setting off some speculation about the Kentucky Republicans' health. And he's not alone. Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein has been answering questions about her own health for, well, a few years now. That's because there's been many stories about her cognitive decline. Since returning to work after missing several months and 91 Senate votes while battling a bout of shingles, Feinstein has had some rather concerning moments. Consider this one, where she appeared to not understand that she was in Congress to vote for something.
It funds priorities submitted. Yeah, just say aye. Okay, just aye. Thank you.
Or consider this story from some Los Angeles Times reporters who asked Feinstein about her absences and started to think maybe she didn't know that she had actually missed a bunch of work.
Benjamin Oreskes is a politics reporter for the LA Times and one of the reporters who spoke with Feinstein.
She was asked, how does it feel to be back? She said it was good. We asked, what does it feel like to hear from people about your return? And she said, I haven't been gone.
What have I heard about what?
About your return. How have they felt about your
No,
return?
I haven't been gone.
Okay.
You should follow them. I haven't been gone. I've been working.
You've been working from home is what you're saying?
No, I've been here.
Of course, it's not just Feinstein, Biden, McConnell. In Pennsylvania, since early on in his high-profile Senate race against Dr. Mehmet Oz, Democrat John Fetterman's mental fitness for office has also been in question, but that was tied mostly to a stroke that he suffered over the summer. Since winning his race, Fetterman has missed 77 roll call votes over a 6-month period. That also included some absences when he went to go get his depression treated in a hospital. And now I'm wondering how many people in government are just getting too old or aren't fit to really be in office, particularly in Congress and particularly in the Senate. Mitch McConnell is 81 years old. Dianne Feinstein is 90 years old. John Fetterman's case is a little different since he's well below the Senate average at 54 years old, but that might be part of the problem. The average age in the Senate is 64 years old and the average age in the House is just 57. Just 31% or 135 members of the House of Representatives is under 50. Of those 135, only 35 or 9% of the House are under 40. Only 10% of the Senate is under 50, and of those 10 senators, only 2, J.D. Vance and John Ossoff, are under 40. The average age of the Senate was never over the age of 60 before the year 2000, but it has been every year since. More drastically, the percentage of senators over 70 has risen from just over 5% in the year 2000 to 15% in 2010 to to nearly 25% this year. And Americans are noticing. According to a YouGov poll from last year, 58% of US adults support age limits for elected officials. The most popular age respondents gave for a limit was 70. Another survey has found that 80% of Americans support term limits for members of Congress. Of course, not everybody agrees, at least not when you listen to some of the people who are actually in Congress. Mitch McConnell's aides have downplayed these events. The first time he froze in front of reporters, aides said he was dehydrated.
How are you feeling now, sir? How are you feeling now?
I'm fine.
Have you seen a doctor? Are you going to see
Any idea what happened?
Huh?
Any idea what happened?
I'm fine. That's the important
Dehydrated?
part. Gotta watch those sandbags.
Thank you, Senator.
Come on. Come on. This time, they said he was lightheaded.
Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell began to answer, trailed off, and then appeared to freeze up for several seconds.
Did you hear the question, Senator? Running for re-election in 2026?
An aide briefly intervened as McConnell stared straight ahead, expressionless,
All right, I'm sorry, you all. We're going to need a minute.
before resuming.
Okay.
His staff said McConnell became momentarily lightheaded and planned to see a doctor before his next event.
Lightheaded. And after Senator Dianne Feinstein, the Senate's oldest member, won her recent re-election to Congress, she still had some defenders, but they've mostly gone silent since her recent health issues, and I think for good reason. Aside from staffers and aides for these senators, however, there doesn't seem to be anyone taking to the press to defend them, and given the polling, it's not hard to see why. In essence, virtually everyone agrees that these people shouldn't be serving except for them. But what are we missing? Is Congress getting too old? Should there be an age limit to serve as an elected official? What about term limits? Because there's so much commentary out there that seems to agree, we're not going to do our normal left-right breakdown today. I'm just going to share some views with you from what people are saying about this issue, and then I'm going to give you my take. Before we jump in with some opinions, if you feel like you're getting any value out of what we're providing here at Tangle, where we're trying to give you some diverse political views, please like the video, put on notifications. All these things help us with the algorithm. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We want YouTube to know there's an audience for people who really want to support more nonpartisan, balanced political news. That's what we're trying to do, but we need your help. So take 2 seconds and go do that. Thanks. All right, one of the first pieces of commentary I want to share is in the Louisville Courier-Journal. This is from Carl Gibson, who said that it's time for Mitch McConnell to retire for his own sake and for the state of Kentucky. He points out that McConnell was elected and is paid by Kentuckians who expect him to be present, alert, lucid, and healthy enough to do the job. After a second freeze-up in just over a month, it's clear that he's no longer able to meet the requirements of his position. He also notes that Kentucky's Republican legislative supermajority passed a law in 2021 requiring that any replacement senator come from the same party as the outgoing incumbent. So Republicans don't even have to worry about the political implications of a McConnell retirement. Over at National Review, the conservative writer Philip Klein said McConnell's second freeze-up was worse than the first and will be difficult to ignore. It's one thing for something to happen once, but when it happens twice and in a progressively worse way, it becomes harder to sweep under the rug, Klein said, adding, "I wish McConnell well, but no matter what one thinks of his performance in the past, it's tough to see how much longer he can serve as the highest-ranking Republican in the Senate if he is not in a position to handle basic questions from reporters." Feinstein, meanwhile, has faced calls to resign since she was hospitalized with shingles in March. Like McConnell, these calls have come from within her own party and her own state. In April, the Sacramento Bee's editorial board said Feinstein has been a barrier-shattering force in California politics, that's a compliment, but now must retire and allow someone more capable to take up her responsibilities to her millions of constituents. She simply is no longer physically able to meet the standard that she set during her long career, the board wrote, noting that her prolonged absences from the Senate for health reasons have stalled critical parts of the Senate Democrats' agenda. In the New York Times, Gail Collins was less charitable to Feinstein, writing that she's giving old age a bad name. While acknowledging the difficulty of admitting that one's age prevents them from doing their job, Collins said that Feinstein should set an example in retirement and show other aging politicians that having a vision for the future doesn't involve just hanging on to the past. Feinstein, she says, risks tarnishing her legacy by clinging to power when it's clear she can't do the job. Finally, Jackie Calms at the Los Angeles Times summed up why McConnell and Feinstein are both equally unfit to serve. Both have had series of increasingly alarming health episodes in recent months that reveal each to be clearly addled. McConnell has been injured by falling numerous times and now freezes up when taking reporter questions. Feinstein needs aides to tell her how to vote and hid an alarming diagnosis of encephalitis, which affects the brain and spinal cord, from the public for months. Both continue to inadvertently demonstrate their dubious fitness for office and need to resign. All right, that is it for the left and the right are saying, so let me now offer my take. Before we jump in, just a reminder, my take is where I give you my opinions on some of the opinions we just shared. This is not meant to persuade you in any way, though today I think I'm going to persuade you. Just my thoughts and perspective, and the hope is you will all leave your thoughts and comments down below. We want this channel to be a place for the Tangle community to connect and share. So whether you agree or disagree with me or anyone sharing, just please keep it respectful in the comments. Remember that we're all trying to get a little bit closer to the truth, but we do want to hear from you. All right, listen, every week, my job is to go out there and find the best arguments for and against a certain issue from the right or the left or whatever. I mean, that's literally my job. And I want to be really clear here. It was basically impossible to find anyone defending Feinstein or McConnell still being in office after this latest McConnell episode, and I'm not going to defend that today. I mean, really, the arguments for them being in office still are basically non-existent.
You hate bloggers, you mock Twitter, you don't even have a Facebook page. You're the one who doesn't exist.
This is one of those very rare issues in America where there seems to be a ton of uniform consensus. These people should just not be in these jobs when they have such obvious health issues. Of course, I'm not a doctor, so whatever's happening to Mitch McConnell is not entirely clear to me. Experts I've read and asked appear to think it could be some kind of stroke or signs of epilepsy or some other complication from this fall he took in March or something else. But it really doesn't look good, and honestly, it doesn't matter. He's the Senate minority leader. He's the highest ranking Republican in Congress, and he doesn't even appear to be able to take questions from reporters at this point. That's not good. Of course, the picture with Dianne Feinstein is a little bit clearer. We've long known she's had cognitive issues, and her colleagues and her aides have noticed. There's been tons of stories about it, and she refused to resign. And now she's suffering from shingles, and she has all these complications from that disease, which is awful. I feel bad for her, just like I feel for Mitch McConnell. But at the same time, that doesn't mean she can just wait it out and serve to the end of her term. To Feinstein's credit, she is already committed to retiring at the end of this term, but she should have retired before this term. 2 more years is already too long. It should have happened. She needs to just step down and let somebody else take over. So I want to be very clear here. McConnell and Dianne Feinstein should both step down. They should not be serving in Congress. Just like I said last week, this isn't just a question of age. I had my 97-year-old grandmother who is sharp to the very end and who I would trust a lot more when she was 95 than somebody like McConnell or Feinstein right now. In an ideal world, these politicians would go out on their own terms. And in a vacuum, I actually see a lot of problems with forcing them out with something like term limits. We lose the experience and know-how of politicians. We lose the consistency and stability of people in office for consecutive years. We take away choice from voters. What happens if you have a great senator and you want them to serve for 30 years and they're 75 years old, but they look great and they sound great and they seem like they have the energy to do the job? We shouldn't take that choice away from voters. But given the rapidly ascending average age in Congress, the fact that gerrymandering has made being an incumbent such an advantage, and the fact there are so few senators willing to step down on their own at an appropriate time, I'm feeling more inclined toward term limits than I ever have before. I don't arrive at that conclusion lightly, but I honestly just don't know how else to solve this problem without an age limit, which would effectively punish an elderly politician who wasn't facing the same health issues as people like Feinstein and McConnell, and I don't want to do that. Feinstein has regularly made comments to the press that made it clear she didn't know what she was supposed to be doing in the moment she was in. That's confusing people, or not knowing it was time to vote on a bill, or whatever else. McConnell, meanwhile, is clearly experiencing some kind of recurring health episode where he can't speak or move, where he's literally frozen, and yet his team is lying to the public blatantly. They're alleging it's dehydration or fatigue. He's 81 years old. He's had a long and storied career. He's going into Congress Hall of Fame. He's overcome health issues like polio to get this far. I have a great deal of respect for him for all of those things. But Congress isn't a retirement home. And I don't mean to say that in a cruel way, but it's a job with millions of people depending on him. It's time to step down. This cannot be acceptable anymore. We simply have to ensure that the people leading our country, regulating our economy, making decisions about schools and war and healthcare and immigration, they're up for the job. And right now, it doesn't feel possible to trust that they are. All right, everybody, that is it for my take. What do you think? I'm actually curious maybe to push you, the viewers. Give me your best counter argument, because we didn't find a lot of arguments from people making the case that McConnell and Feinstein should stay in office. So what do you think? What's the best argument that McConnell and Feinstein should remain in office? I want to hear from you guys in the comments. See if you can change my mind. I don't think you will, but it's a good challenge and I'd love to hear from you. Speaking of comments, as always, I want to address a comment from last week's video. This one came from somebody responding to the video about President Biden. This viewer said, "The only issue I see with you showing the clips of Biden is that he has been very open about having a stutter, and I think at least some of the instances in those clips is that manifesting." So this is actually a good point. I probably should have mentioned the whole thing about Biden's stutter. Yes, there have been many stories about the fact that Biden for his entire life has struggled with stuttering. That being said, I agree with you that maybe a couple clips in there that we showed last week could feasibly be related to his stutter. But I also want to be very clear that you can watch videos of Joe Biden from 10, 15 years ago when he also had a stutter, and he looks really, really different than he does now. Just take this as one example.
I paid no taxes, and that makes me smart. What does it make the rest of us suckers? I mean, is everybody? No, I really mean it. Think about. Can you think of any president you've studied, read about, or knew, who would say anything like that? Name me one president who would do that. It angers me, quite frankly.
When I watch that clip and then I watch this clip,
you're going to be able to get an Amtrak, and instead of going through the tunnel of Baltimore at 30 miles an hour because nothing's been done under the Chesapeake Bay under the Baltimore area for 80 years. They're going to be able to go through it 100 miles an hour. They're going to see railroads going from Syracuse all the way down to New York, upstate New York. Anyway, to the city. But I guess what I'm saying,
it looks a lot to me like President Biden has aged a lot in the last 10 or 15 years, which he has. It's totally understandable, but I do think there are still legitimate questions about his fitness, and I do think there are real questions about whether we want him running again and leaving office when he's 86 years old. All right, everybody, that is it for today's video. As always, if you want to support our work, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, make sure you turn on notifications. We'll be right back here around this time next week. And please leave a comment. Give me your best take on why Dianne Feinstein and Mitch McConnell should still be in office. We'll see you guys next week. Have a good one. Peace. They're too old. They're just too old.